So your grandfather, when he started the company, were there attempts by the British to stop him because tea plantations were sort of monopolized by the British at that point?
If you weren't a part of the British system, then your teas weren't auctions. Many people in India have been going to tea stalls for hundreds of years.
True.
And that has been the social network before Facebook. People used to meet at tea stalls.
Yeah.
We should not cut ourselves off from our history. The way Indians engage with tea is far more authentic, and I would rather be in tea than in coffee because it is something which Indians really feel as their own. Tea is like coffee. It started outside India. But Indians have made tea their own.
Outside of your operating business, how do you plan your investments?
One is you have to have the right management. I certainly don't have the ability or the interest of managing my investments. So finding the best investment manager and then have the same decade-long mindset of seeing those investments being preserved and grown.
Should India itself have tariffs to make sure that our industries develop better?
Tariff, I think, is a very blunt instrument. It hopefully is a temporary measure. What is going to be the source of volatility is unknown. But our businesses have to be resilient and in some ways build off those volatilities.
Hello and welcome to Let's Mint Money. I'm your host, Neil Borate. The show is all about how India's wealth creators perceive money itself. The show is brought to you by Mint in association with Waterfield Advisors. My guest today is Rudra Chatterjee, who heads the 100-year-old Luxmi Tea Company, apart from, of course, OBT, which is a carpets and home furnishing maker. So, welcome, Rudra. First, let's begin with your childhood and the experiences, influences that shaped later on how you ran the business.
Sure. I grew up in Kolkata. I was very close to my grandfather, who was the founder of the business, and heard the stories of the founding of the business during the freedom struggle, how he worked with other young Bengali and Assamese students who fought as part of Anushilan Shumiti, which was a movement for freedom, and how they escaped to Tripura, which was a principality outside British dominance, and started the freedom movement. And I grew up very close to my sister and grew up, in a relatively free-flowing childhood and saw my father work very hard in the business. I think the special aspect of my childhood was, I was mostly left alone. And, in some ways it could be construed as boredom, but it actually kindled curiosity to take the time and find out, how things work, how people behave.
Give you the space to think.
Giving the space to think.
So your grandfather, when he started the company, were there attempts by the British to stop him because tea plantations were sort of monopolized by the British at that point?
So the infrastructure was British. So if you if you weren't a part of the British system, then your teas weren't auctioned. So the solution to that was growing green tea, which was sold in Amritsar instead of sending it to auction in Calcutta. If you weren't sending it through British Railway, your teas weren't insured. So there were ways, if you weren't a British company, you wouldn't be able to take loans from British banks. So there was a parallel ecosystem that emerged, which supported from revolutionary banks, which was called the Bank of Kumilla in those days, then became the United Bank later. From different systems, it went to Amritsar and from there to Central Asia. So while the British had a system, they didn't ban production of tea, but they had a system that only worked for them. And companies like ours had to evolve a new system that worked for us.
And which is why the shift to Tripura.
It was, that's where we started. It was a place where the British wouldn't grow tea. And later we moved into areas like Assam and Darjeeling, where, but the start was in Tripura.
So you went to Oxford and Columbia to study. Anything in that time which shaped your decisions later on?
So Columbia was first, and I studied business, and that was a foundational aspect of my learning how operations, marketing, finance worked. It was followed by a stint at Booz Allen Hamilton, where I went into companies and consulted. So I learned how companies worked. Oxford was later where I studied history of design, which was very interesting to me because the objects we make, the carpet, the furniture, even the tins in which our teas are sold, what is the evolution? Why does it make sense? Every object you see has a history, who first used it, why, maybe like, for example, when you look at the espresso machines, the stovetop espressos made out of aluminum, it came out of wartime Italy, and how the history of that object today looks very unique, but it started because of a particular reason. So those two educational backgrounds, I think, gives a balance of both the business and the historical significance, the heritage of the object.
Sure. Actually, that reminds me of a conversation that we had about how tea is perceived in India. Today, when people spend a lot of money in cafes, they tend to drink coffee a lot, really expensive coffee. Tea, for whatever reason, hasn't had that shift, that evolution, although there are so many varieties of even black tea. Could you tell us more about that, the varieties that are actually there and how we should?
So I think the way Indians engage with tea is far more authentic, and I would rather be in tea than in coffee because it is something which Indians really feel as their own. Tea is like coffee. It started outside India, but Indians have made tea their own. They, the way they make chai is authentically Indian, and it is part of daily life. We want to keep that space, but we want it to be honored. We want to ensure that the quality of the product, the ritual, is really shaping the experience of the consumer. And taking that and evolving from there, really understanding what the consumer wants, how do they experience, where is the tea grown, what makes good tea, how to brew it appropriately, and really elevating their experience. I think the experience of coffee, other than some parts of India, it is an experience where Indians don't feel the same kind of connection. Yes, when you go out, there is a notion, let's meet for coffee. It's important that tea is brought there, and and it is very capable of going there. There's the tea can certainly add its footprint to community experiences, but we should also honor what we have and move from that with authenticity.
Just to finish off that point, so one of the reasons why we go out for coffee is because some of the finer coffees, a cappuccino, an espresso, etc., we can't make at home. I mean, some of us, yes, have machines but the average Indian family has just instant coffee at home. So going out becomes an occasion. Is it possible with tea to introduce varieties and flavors which you just can't easily make at home?
100%. So there are thousands of teas that it's not easy to make at home. Like if you, the ritual of making matcha is as complex as, brewing cappuccino. And you can try that. There's certainly the aspect of you go out to do something that you don't do at home. I understand. But many people in India have been going to tea stalls for hundreds of years.
True.
And that has been the social network before Facebook. People used to meet at tea stalls. Yeah. We should not cut ourselves off from our history we have to take that and say, what does it mean today when you meet for chai outside? And along with that, there are green tea, there's other functional teas like chamomile and valerian. We should look at the entire experience of a consumer and how that consumer acquaints herself with tea.
Now, coming to the business and how it has evolved, there was a decision to go into carpets. Now, you also have an international expansion. You acquired a company in the UK. Can you tell us about that evolution and why those decisions were taken?
So we have two different businesses. One is tea, as you spoke about. Another is home furnishings, OBT. OBT is a 100-year-old carpet maker started by Oakley, Bowden and Taylor. That's how the name comes. Which then started manufacturing furniture, started manufacturing home textiles, and retails our carpets and some of our furniture and home textiles across stores around the world in New York, London, Dubai, and 7 Indian cities, Delhi and Mumbai as well. Our goal is to make carpets that work with the Indian textile heritage, the Indian design heritage. So we have partnered with Tarun Thyalani and made chicken curry rugs. We worked with J.J. Balaya and made the Jamawar shawl-based rugs. We've worked with Abraham and Thakur and did tie and dye in carpets. Our view is that your home, for an Indian person especially, is a place that you have your own individuality. We live sometimes in multi-generational homes, or even if you are moving into an apartment which is not representative of your culture or your preferences, you can make it into a home by adding home textiles, adding furniture, carpets, and which is why we offer a diversity of high quality products which speak to you. So our goal is that you will find yourself in OBT. You will find a product where you can sit in a corner and read a book or have a cup of tea and enjoy your space, your own identity within OBT products. So our notion is very different from an office furniture maker, which tries to make, same, what is working around the world and all the products are similar. This is to find your unique product within OBT.
And as you said before, there is no Indian company per se that dominates the home, right?
And that is an unusual thing. There are large home furnishings companies, IKEA, Williams-Sonoma, globally. And in a large country like India, if you say which is a home company, there is none. And I think that is going to change significantly. Maybe we all had our favorite, cabinet maker in our hometown, and that is what we, and that's why in every part of India there were different carpentry and other ways we, made our homes. But I think now is a very good time to have a home company, and OBT sees itself as a home company, which makes products that work with your lifestyle and your taste. These are all cultural objects, whether you use Muga silk, or whether you use, handspun cotton, or you use, what kind of wool, New Zealand wool or Bikaner wool. And then, how do you dye it through vegetable dyes, and what kind of designs come into the products. All of those are your cultural identity. And we want to have that story. I think India is a country with multi-layered cultures, and there is not one size, one design, one color that fits all of us, and that we celebrate as OBT.
A slightly more tactical issue that's been out in the news of late, tariffs. How much have they affected you? And given that there are a lot of multinationals in India, should India itself have tariffs to make sure that our industries develop better?
I don't think tariffs is a solution to a country that wants to become a global power. India has a strong economy which is going to get stronger. We are growing at a 7% rate of growth, doubling our economy every decade. We want the best products in the world to come into our country. We want the best inputs to come into the country. Tariff, I think, is a very blunt instrument. It hopefully is a temporary measure. What it does is it adds volatility. Tariff is only one of the volatility. I think climate change, COVID in the past, wars in different parts of the world, energy prices, all of those are volatilities with which businesses need to grapple with. I think what is going to be the source of volatility is unknown, but our businesses have to be resilient and in some ways build off those volatilities. I think Indian business people are extremely adaptive. For good or bad, we've had a lot of volatility in the past, policy related and environmental aspects. So I think especially family run Indian businesses, they are adaptive, they think long term, they can weather changes, and it is hopefully a good time for Indian business people to be expansive, to see how this mindset, which is contrasting with a quarterly mindset and extremely just-in-time inventory, which has been the hallmark of Western companies, which does not, it is efficient, but not very good for volatile environments. And I think this is certainly adds stress to our business, but hopefully we've been stress tested to deal with such stresses.
Is your acquisition of the UK company a response to having production in a single country and then the risks that come with that?
So the UK acquisition was a tea acquisition called Brew Tea, which is because they have an amazing company which is very high quality leaf teas in UK, and half the sales are through subscriptions, and the average subscriber stays for more than 3 years. I saw those things and I said, this is a special company. And that's the only reason one would want to acquire a company, because it does something special and something that actually adds to your business in a way that makes more of your business. So similarly, the acquisition in Rwanda, because we feel confidence that we can grow good tea. We grow Makai Berry tea, which is the best in the world. So we've gone to Rwanda and said, in the high altitudes of 7,000 feet, we can make amazing tea. When it comes to OBT, it has been much more of greenfield, building up a furniture factory, ground up, using the best material, getting the best talent. Our CEO is from Denmark and has 30 years of furniture making experience, has been hands-on furniture maker. So making amazing products in every field that speaks to the need of the evolving Indian customer is going to inform any acquisition that we make.
Do you think subscription led tea can take off in India?
I think it can, and there are some challenges to subscribing using credit cards and the OTPs and other issues. But I think if you found your drink, if you found that, okay, I enjoy second flush Makai Berry Darjeeling tea, I don't see why I will drink something different tomorrow. I wake up in the morning, that's what I have.
Yeah.
And I want to ensure that I have a fresh package coming to me every 3 weeks or 4 weeks or 2 months. So I think subscription, the notion is good. It brings you something that you want on a regular basis. And I think that is going to be one of the areas that we want to pursue, because that also cuts out a lot of you need not have too much packaging, or you don't have to have the rent of a store. You can have all of those to find the consumer. But once the consumer and you have found each other, then it can lock in and say that, okay, now we become regular customers.
Yeah.
It should be done in a way that it's easy to cancel if the consumer wants to, not consume. But as long as life of the consumer is easier because of it. I think I am a subscriber to Blue Tokai coffee, and it's very convenient to get it every week or every alternate week.
Right. Let's talk about your investments now. Outside of your operating business, how do you plan your investments?
So for me, investments that I spend most of my time thinking about are in my business. Outside the business, I use some of the same philosophy that I would use for business. One is you have to have the right management. I certainly don't have the ability or the interest of managing my investments. So finding the best investment manager and then have the same decade-long mindset of seeing those investments being preserved and grown. Just like I operate my business in a way that I want to nurture the business, grow the business. I'm not someone who looks at a business saying that I want to get out of the business in 3 years or 5 years. And that's the same for my investments. I'm looking at it as a long-term creation of wealth without having to constantly monitor it or react to, especially the point that we're talking about volatility. That's going to happen to every business. So every day things might be much better or much worse than you expected. But if you have a slightly longer period of time, I think much of it averages out. If you're in the right industry with the right macro aspects, I think much of it, is self-correcting.
So how do you split your money between private markets and public equities?
So all of it is done by managers. I'll have discussions with the managers. Waterfield is one of my managers. I'll speak to them, get their guidance. And I have no preconceived idea of how it should be, whether it should be private or public, or how should it be, whether it should be in gold, in commodities. All of those things, I think, are, of course, over time, we can keep rejigging the portfolio. But in general, it is with the sense that I maintain some diversity and long-term approach.
Do you do some startup investing as well?
Yes. So those are slightly different, where my interest is to see, meet founders. There's nothing more exciting than meeting founders of companies who are trying something new. Also, if they're somehow related to the work I do, it may not be exactly the same, but someone who's working on D2C in home textiles or apparel, what are the learnings that I can get? So it's, when I do startup investing, number one is it's not one, but several, because each of those are high risk. And second is, I don't only think of the return, but also the ecosystem that is creating and how do I learn from it. So it is there I am little more interested, and it is slightly higher involvement for my own learning than the investment through investment managers.
Can you tell us about some startups that you've picked and what the thesis was or what your approach was?
So there's been small startups in the tea space that I've worked with in Assam, in Bengal, in US, and also in the home furnishing space. My approach is, how are they treating home furnishings differently from me? I've also in Rwanda, where we have tea estates. Someone who's selling teas to cafes, how are they changing their knowledge of the local environment? And even in a company that is selling fresh juices in Calcutta, just the way they get into the market. And also sometimes they reach out to me because they feel that I'm an investor, not only because of the money, but because I understand the environment of the business. So in those investments, it's an amount of money that I should be comfortable never seeing again. And it should also be a long-term play, seeing, how do these companies do over the long term.
Sure. So, in case of public markets, you rely on your advisors.
Yes.
Any thoughts about how an advisor should be compensated? Should it be commissions or fees?
I think it depends. I think both have its merits. I think the biggest part is I choose advisors for their competence, not I don't think it's the best idea to go for the cheapest advisor for anything.
Yeah.
It's important to go with an advisor who's the most competent, and the fees are fair and transparent. That's most important, that you see what you're getting into. But, the last thing I'd like to do for where the advisory fees is a very small percentage of the total amount of money is to make that the basis of decision.
Yeah. Okay, let's now turn finally to your legacy and how you think of money overall. As we were discussing earlier, you mentioned that it's less about consuming what you have, but more about passing on a strong legacy. So could you elaborate on that a bit?
Yes, I think my notion of money has been informed by my family, by my parents, by my wife, and it is what it does versus how you can use it. It can do a lot of productive investments with it. You can also do a lot of impactful work with it. We work in tea and home furnishings, which employ thousands of people, and the impact that money can have on them is certainly a very high ROI. It may not be exactly financial, but it's the life changing with a relatively small amount of your profits on weavers and pluckers is significant. In terms of legacy, I think of my grandfather and how he impacted me. It wasn't with money, but through his example. I think it's very important as parents that kids learn from our examples. They should feel secure about the money, but hopefully not that it in some ways reduces their ambition, but encourages them to be ambitious and try out new things. That is the best that money can do, that you create the basis of an ambitious environment where you say that I can do it even if some of those go wrong, but not that the environment should never be that this is something that we are that in some ways reduces that ambition or reduces that drive, or makes you feel that there's a pressure to only do what has been done before. I think sometimes business families also say, I grow tea in this way. I grow, tea through tea estates and sell those teas. That's the same thing that the next generation has to do. That is not a good idea. In fact, it's important to have a professionalized company so that your next generation learn from your example and are ambitious in the way that they choose to be. And this doesn't collapse without their management. And it's important to do it in everybody's lifetime, in the life cycle of one's work. And I hope to do that for OBT and Luxmi as well.
Right, Rudra, thank you so much.
Thank you so much.